Hi everyone, this is AP Persavage with Autodesk. I'm a technical specialist here. Recently in a customer conversation, we had a situation come up where this particular customer wanted to do kind of a complex workflow. Basically, they wanted to set up search sets, selection sets in Navisworks, ultimately have those portrayed in a BIM 360 field project so that they could work through status updates as they're commissioning equipment. Ultimately, the goal was to be able to reflect the status updates back in Navisworks to their model and assign a specific color value to reflect those status updates. So go ahead and take a look at how we can make this possible using the BIM 360 platform. So here I'm just going to begin in Navisworks, where I've actually aggregated these models using the BIM 360 Glue add-in to Revit. But nonetheless, I've set up a couple search sets and selection sets here. You can see the shower, heat pump, smoke damper, and a couple of fans that I've previously created. Basically, the first step here, and this is a critical one, I'm just going to do a file save as and save this locally as an NWD file. Again, it's very important file format here that we're actually sharing this with BIM 360 Glue and ultimately Field as an NWD file format. So once I've done this save as, I'm going to go back into my BIM 360 Glue app and just go to my project main page. And here I'm just going to see that I've previously set up an NWD file, but I'm basically going to browse to my folder location and re-upload this NWD that I just saved as. Now, one thing to note here, it's not going to actually let me upload it this first time, but I'll go through the process. The reason it's not going to let me upload is because I still have that file open in Navisworks. So when I go down to open, it's basically going to try to upload and update this model, but it's going to make me actually, go ahead and close out of it because it's locked by another process. So I'll just close this out in Navis quickly, and again, just upload that NWD file format here. Select open, begin the upload process to update that. And usually this takes a couple minutes to get that NWD pushed up. Get that in, and when that's actually pushed, when that's actually completed gluing, here you guys can see that I'm getting a little notification that my version is out of date for the equipment that I've shared with Field. So now I can see the thumbnail is actually loaded. My version 4 has been replaced. Now I got to re-access that model and just go ahead the process of resharing this equipment data with BIM 360 Field. So let the model load up. Here I'm just going to navigate in, not super necessary, but nonetheless, selecting on the Models tab. From here I can see equipment sets that I've actually updated in BIM 360 Glue, but nonetheless I just want to share this entire NWD model with BIM 360 Field. Here I get a couple notifications and I'm just going to select OK. Now in BIM 360 Field, in my admin capabilities, I can see that this model is now processing since I've just reshared it. And again, this takes a couple moments just to let it process and populate in. But when I do this, I should see all the search sets in Navisworks, as well as those two I briefly touched on in BIM 360 Glue. So again, we'll just wait for this to populate. There we go. Now on the thumbnail, I can go into Manage Equipment Mapping, and there's all my sets, even designated out by icon, Navisworks versus Glue. For the sake of this example, I'm just going to key in on, let's say, the actual heat pump that I want to go ahead and map out. So here I'm just going to select Next. This is a type of equipment that I previously designated, and I'm just going to go to Mapping Mode, and I want to go through Advanced. The reason I want to do this is I want to recognize the GUID number, the GUID, to recognize that specific piece of equipment. Here I just want to map the appropriate ID and properties, and I'm just going to select the name and type to carry through on the name and description of my BIM 360 Field equipment. I can go as detailed as I want with properties there. Here I'm just going to push some generic properties that ultimately I'm going to map to Field. So the type, name, status is going to be key. That's actually what we're going to be tracking off of. And usually, again, this moment takes a couple seconds just to map those those pieces of equipment, and here you can see it processing. When it's complete, I'll actually be able to start updating those statuses. There we go. You can see that it's fully mapped. I'll back right out, and I'm actually going to access this in my basic BIM 360 field project. So out of admin mode, navigate to the equipment, and here I can see that that heat pump has actually been created as a piece of equipment, and you can see the type and the description actually carried through from my model into BIM 360 field, so transferred those values into my project. So if I want to drill into it, here we can designate out a couple properties that we're going to start with, or just remember I'm on specified. I'll give this a couple dates here. We'll start with today, install date. Let's go, how about Friday, tomorrow, and then ultimately let's say just next week for the warranty start date. So just filling in a couple values that ultimately I want to reflect in my Navisworks model here. At this point, they're not super critical, but we'll want to be able to see those updates as we change things in field, ultimately seeing those in Navisworks. Okay, so I'm just going to switch gears again back into Navisworks to repopulate out this model. And to do that, I'm going to actually access that NWD file that I previously uploaded to BIM 360 Glue. So here I can see the version 4, and I'm just going to go ahead and open this up. Once I'm in the model, again, I can see all my search and selection sets on the left-hand side. I'm going to key in on this heat pump. Really what I want to do is reflect those properties, but to start, I'm just going to create a known view here of this specific piece of equipment so that when I'm in the field and need to be able to track its status or take a quick view of it, I'll have a view set up for me right away. Let that populate in. There we can see the view has now been created. So again, ultimately, I want to reflect the equipment properties here. So let me pull out the Properties tab, see that I have some standard properties, but I really care about the equipment properties. And this is an add-in that you'll see the link to in the description of this video. But nonetheless, when I select equipment properties, it begins pulling that data from BIM 360 field. So everything that we previously mapped is now connected to this specific NWD model hosted in BIM 360 Glue. So when I go to the Properties tab, I can see under BIM 360, I have the description, the status, the type, all those dates I tied in BIM 360 field, and we'll actually go through the process of updating this a couple times here. So in my equipment, let's go down to actually set the status as installed. And we'll actually toggle maybe, we'll say the date. We'll serve it down to the warranty starting in the middle of September here, just to reflect some updates here. So the properties still the same until I refresh that equipment property. So I just basically select it again. When I go back and select on that equipment, I can now see that properties under BIM 360 have been updated, now installed. So it's reflected those. To actually track this to a color value, this is where I can set up an appearance profiler. And this one I've previously set up with a couple of the BIM 360 categories and property values status to track here. And I have yellow, orange, green, and red for the different statuses. So when I hit run under installed, it's actually being applied there. If I go back to field and set the status to delivered, go back into Navisworks, I got to re-pull these from the equipment properties. I can see that the color status has not been updated. I'll refresh the properties. Okay. When I select on that equipment, I can now see that the status is delivered, which should reflect in red now. If I go ahead and rerun this appearance profiler, bear with me here. It's still showing up as green because I haven't rerun the profiler. At this point, just select run, and there I can see that the status is now reflected in that color value. Now being delivered. The other end of this is obviously in the iPad, right? We need the guys in the field to be able to reflect these statuses. So if I go to equipment on the iPad, I can see that that heat pump is there available to me. When I select in on it, I can see that the status is outdated at this point because I haven't resynced this particular project since I've gone through this process. So on the bottom right hand corner of the screen, I can select sync. This process takes, again, a couple moments just to re-download some of that data. Now I can see that data has been refreshed. I'm just going to close out of the sync, go back to my equipment just by selecting in on it, and I can see that the status is now delivered. If I want to further update that, right, let's put it back to installed. So ultimately this will reflect green in my model when I'm completed. So I'm going to resync and just re-push that model so that it ties back into not only the BIM 360 field web, but ultimately back in that Navisworks model. So again, we'll give this a couple seconds to refresh. Now this is all refreshed, I can close out of the sync and actually go back into my model here where I ultimately want to retrieve those equipment properties in Navisworks so that my status is properly reflected. Here I can see that the status, if I go back to equipment, basically it just has to refresh this web page and it should show up as installed. There we go. So now that that's installed, let's make sure that we push this to Navisworks. And again, I'm just going to refresh the equipment properties, select OK. I can see that my status already is updated even before I select OK. It's still being reflected as red. That's because I just need to refresh my appearance profiler or rerun it. So selecting in on that, select run. There we can see the green for installed is now being reflected. So this is a way that we can effectively update the statuses of equipment to a visualization within our model using Navisworks and BIM 360 field. So the last piece here is to get these statuses to reflect into BIM 360 Glue as well, if I so choose. That way, they're readily available to me in the mobile app. So the two that I have done here, you can see that I have the shower. If I go to the selection tree and select a little bit deeper, I can see the BIM 360 values is delivered, and then ultimately that heat pump, which we just did in green for installed. Basically, to get this into BIM 360 Glue, I just do a file save as, and I do have to save this locally as an NWD file, so we'll go ahead and save that off. Once that's complete, again, I'm just going to close that file out. Back in BIM 360 Glue, we'll go back to our desktop or our dashboard view and simply just select upload models, again browsing to that file, and we'll select in on the NWD file format, which again is very important. We'll just select open, upload, and then it's just going to be an update of that model. So once this is completed, we'll take a look at the thumbnail. So now I can see that NWD file has been pushed. When I hover over just the thumbnail, I can see that I'm now version 4 of 5 as far as the equipment goes. So basically I just got to reshare those with field to keep that attachment. But nonetheless, let's take a look at the model. Now that status shading that we set up in Navisworks with the appearance profiler will be reflected in this model as well, readily accessible in BIM 360 Glue. So in order to refresh this glue model, basically you have to re-upload that NWD, since that is where the appearance profiler information is contingent to. But nonetheless, I can view this shading in either Navisworks or BIM 360 Glue at this point. So this effectively shows how we can track status updates for some of our larger equipment in a project and even in a model. Thanks a lot for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave some comments. I'd be happy to get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you.